2020 has been quite a year for us with the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of us had to start working remotely, and our Watershed Ag Program staff were able to go home in the middle of March and continue all of their operations that they've been able to do beforehand. Our whole farm planners were able to conduct business via phone and email with participants to continue their whole farm planning. The technicians and engineers were physically able to take their equipment home, their computers, so they could continue designing the BMP projects that needed to be implemented this year. So that all happened for a few months, and then by late May, we were able to start getting back out on the farms with construction, and the 4 projects that were previously put out to bid and contracted were able to start. So at the end of May, beginning of June, they started construction, plus any emergency repairs that had been waiting. We were able to get out on the farms and do emergency repairs so that we could start getting back and doing our implementation. So this all happened in May and June, and then from July, we were then able to start putting more things out to bid of all the designs that we had all previously completed and in our procurement office. So since July, we've been putting a lot of things out to bid, but we quickly, in just a couple of months' time, reached the capacity of what the contractors in this area, the local contractors, were able to do this year. So we've booked them solid, plus whatever private work that they've had. So they're full out and they're doing a lot of construction right now. However, we have another 8 to 10 projects that we want to put out to bid the designs are complete, and we're looking to put them out this fall so that we can get contracts to start in the spring for 2021 construction. So this has all been taking place. Among other things, we've been able to do liming, some liming packages for farms to get the lime out to help the pH on the soils. Our riparian and crep plantings and sprays, we were able to get some of those projects out and completed all during this pandemic and working remotely time frame. Now, we are currently getting ready to start our 2021 workload for our staff. So we're ready to roll that out and get those plans in the technicians and engineering's hands so they can get the designs done for either 2021 construction or even 2022 construction. So that's all going on, and we're moving forward with that. Just recently, we've had the National Academy of Sciences completed a 2-year review of the New York City Watershed protection programs, and we're looking now at that summary, which is over 400 pages long, and we're looking to see what aspects of that plan or the review that we can look at for the next 20 years and how we can do a better job with the water quality programs that we already have in place. How can they be enhanced? We're going to be talking with the Department of Environmental Protection and the regulators to see from this review what is going to be better for our programs. So this, there's still a lot of things going on. Obviously, many of the big events in this year were canceled, but one of the things that we are proud of is this year we were able to showcase this farm that was one of the RCPP projects, the Resource Conservation Partnership Program. The Watershed Ag Council received a grant back in 2016 for $1.2 million. Of that, $825,000 is used for covered barnyards and waste facilities on farms. So through an application process, we were able to select 3 farms and put those funds towards those farms. One was the Andy Post, the second was the Don Wickham Farm, and now the showcasing today is the Fred Kuhn Farm that was completed last year and came out very, very well. And we're proud of the funding that we got that we could put towards this project to help with stretching our budget for the other projects that are needed in the watershed. So hopefully you enjoy the rest of the production of the Fred Kuhn Farm, and we'll go into more detail on what that farm project was all about. Thank you.
Okay, welcome to the 2020 Ag Program Committee Tour. It's a virtual tour here at the Walterna Farm. We have Fred Kuhn Jr., the owner, his father Fred Sr., also is an operator on the farm, along with Devin, his son. I think we'll start first with Fred. Maybe you can talk about the history of the farm. Here's on cue. Here's your dad. Yep. Fred, you're just in time.
What?
We need your history.
Yeah, okay.
Of the farm.
I want to turn it into a casino.
You're on film, you know.
All you're going to win is crap.
So, can you tell us about the history of the farm? You know, when you got established, that kind of thing. You know, where did the name come from, Walterna?
My father's name was Walter. My mother's name was Erna.
Okay. And that's how it's Walterna. Yeah. Okay. When was the farm established?
1946.
By your dad?
Yeah.
Okay.
He worked in Grumman Aircraft on Long Island, but he was always, I'd say, an outdoors person. He hated the factory.
Okay.
Actually, he was foreman of one of the floors, working for Grumman, but he just hated it.
He hated it.
And we moved up here. We had first 7 cows that we milked by hand.
Wow.
No electric in the barn. We had to carry water or let them out, one or the other.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
How long did you guys do that for?
I was 4 years old, so I would guess about 2 years. And
you got bucket milkers then, or?
We got 2 surge milkers, probably after 2 years. Okay. Yeah. And the first haying was done by what they call a dump rake, and pitched on the wagon by hand.
Okay. Was that barn? It was smaller then.
Yeah,
I'm imagining, right?
It was
70 feet long.
Yeah, 60, 70 feet long.
The old barn was completely removed in 68.
Me and my brother had to double shift milk in the new part while I had it contracted to rip it out and renew it because we couldn't I built the first 100 feet, me and my father, like myself, but the other, we just couldn't handle it. I mean, between trying to milk double shift and get hay in, and so we had contractors.
So when you got older, your brother and you and your dad farmed together?
Yeah, for a while. Yeah, I graduated in '59, and in 1966 he passed away. So then, so 66.
Okay.
So then in 68, me and my brother had the barn renewed.
Like what we see now?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, part of it, yeah.
Okay.
The 70 feet of it, yeah.
70.
It used to be an old barn with an addition.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now it's all the same.
Right, okay. And how many cows were you milking then when your brother and you were partners?
Well, before it was like 35 to 50, but then...
because we had like room for 42, but we had a double shift. I mean, we had...
No, I mean before you built it.
Yeah.
Originally, there was only like room for 35 or so, and then we went to 70.
70. So then we had to double shift milk for all summer.
Wow, that's a pain. So now Fred Jr. now has come in as the owner and operator now with you helping, I'm assuming still.
Helping, yeah.
That's just been recent?
Yeah, we changed it over, 2 years ago.
Okay.
I'm a sole proprietor LLC now, so that way we transferred things.
Okay. So how many cows are you milking, and how many young stock do you have?
There's 80 milk cows and 50 young stock, give or take a few.
Okay. And then acres of land that you're
there's 3. We own 360 here, but only 80 is tillable.
Okay.
And some pasture, and then we rent another 100, between 100 and 200, somewhere around there.
And that's grass, hay, corn silage.
Yeah. There's about 50 acres of corn, and the rest is grass for the most part. 3 miles in each direction.
And then, as far as your participation in the program, you signed up in like 95 maybe, or was it earlier than that?
Yeah, because we had the first project done in 97, 98 was the barnyard.
That was the barnyard.
Barnyard,
Uncovered concrete barnyard.
Any access roads.
Okay. And that was just dirt before, or gravel barnyard?
That's being nice.
Okay. Mud?
Rocks and mud and
Kinda like
other
what
things.
this looked like before.
Worse than this.
Okay, worse than that. And you're right by that stream.
Yeah, there actually was springs in the barnyard coming out from under the barn.
Okay.
So we drained all the clean water away now for the most part.
And then you established a CREP area.
Yeah, that was
Below that.
That was in 09 we did that.
Okay.
With the spring developments.
Right.
And
So that must have improved things tremendously, having that concrete barnyard.
oh yeah. It used to be it was just a mud hole.
Right.
Plus mud hole with the spring in the middle where it would build up like nice ice float in a glacier in the winter and all kinds of great stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then there was a crossing put in,
Yes.
flat crossing, that we ended up actually replacing that this year with the culvert crossing.
Yeah. Really, from other than one little spot, most of the open water is now fenced off.
Okay. Yeah.
For the most part. At least a high traffic open water.
And then there were some access roads done too, right?
Yeah, there's one here, access road, well, partially up to the hill here.
So then last year we had the covered barnyard, manure storage, underground outlet. There was some fencing, grass waterway, and access road done as part of the RCPP project, which is the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. I can never remember that, but I did this.
I've heard it enough. Now it's starting to click.
And they put about 300,000 roughly of
Yes.
USDA money into that program, and then WAC made up the difference. So I remember when I was planning this with you, this was really a very sloppy, muddy,
Water running through the middle.
running right down. There's an access road there. Water was running right down there. The feeder wagon sometimes was stuck there when I came out to take those wonderful photos. So it was definitely a water quality issue. And then at times, I know you said sometimes you have to pile manure from the main dairy farm or dairy barn, so we accommodated the structure to be 6 months of storage for the heifers and dry cows, and then for the milking cows 2 months, because that's what you figured you might have to pile. I guess maybe one thing you might want to say is some of the benefits that you've seen since we put in the structure, that you've seen.
First of all, save some on feed because we're not dumping the feed in the feeder wagon and it gets rained on or frozen, and also they don't pull half of it out and stomp it in the mud, stuff like that. So it's easy to clean, because used to be I had to try to clean in the winter and stuff, try to clean the dirt and stuff up, and you get rocks and be a mess. Or it'd thaw out and then there'd be 4 feet of yuck around the wagon, and then you got to get the wagon out of the yuck and move it around, because we didn't have it so we could move it every day. There wasn't enough room anyway.
I imagine a lot of times you couldn't spread that because
We didn't spread. We didn't spread it because there were rocks and stuff in it. We borrow a dump wagon and just take it in the cornfield and dump it and spread it out and plow it under.
I mean, this way now you can capture all the manure
Yeah.
from the heifers.
No, concrete is nice. Plus they're drier and cleaner. Even as messy as it gets right now, they kind of come in here and lay down too much.
They look pretty clean.
Yeah. For as messy, if you would have seen it yesterday before I cleaned it, and that was only 4 or 5 days, it was getting to be a mess again. But hopefully now that it's drier and not as hot, it stays cleaner. But
One thing Devin said also, he said there's more feed space, so they're not as
Yeah.
crowded as they were around the feeder wagon.
yeah.
So that some of the smaller ones now can get right up in there.
Well, yeah, and I got the hay in there so they can, if somebody don't want to eat here, they can go in there. And it used to be it was a battle over the feeder wagon, and we should have had two. But then if you spread more feed out, then more of it goes bad.
Right. And then the other thing Devin mentioned last time I was here with the status review, he said that, or even maybe you said it, that sometimes you can lock them in
Well, I can shut everything off.
and just dry right up to do your hay.
Yeah, that
and
too,
kind of
yep,
thing.
yeah.
And you said for breeding,
Yeah, I can shut everything up and just bring one around and pen it up if I need to. Even when cows are ready to freshen, I can pull one out,
right.
pen it up easy by myself for the most part.
Now I know you said you hadn't had to use the manure storage much because last year was kind of an open winter, but I know what you had in there, you already spread. Fred Senior spread that, right?
What?
You spread the manure that was in here the other week.
Yeah, because
right?
like when we took the second cutting off, I want to get some on. Like we got some beautiful third cutting up.
Yeah, he cleaned it. He cleaned it. That was the plan, to save some and go up on the high fields.
Yeah, because you can't.
As soon as we get it off, because after September 15th, if it's a damp fall, you don't go up there. There's
Okay.
no.
I took a
So then you don't get the manure up there.
Right, you don't get the. You only can get manure up past here between after each cutting and September, October. The minute it gets too wet and greasy, you don't go up there because you'll end up.
Yeah, I probably took 12, 14 loads out between the couple days that I did it.
Okay.
And then you even took some 3 miles the other way.
Yeah, the other way too.
When we
Yeah.
got some off there.
So we also have Rob Orleski, our engineering specialist here, and maybe Rob can talk about kind of how the construction went here and how that all went last year. Rob?
Yeah. So the building was Belden Trucking was the general contractor. We used Norwich Concrete for the concrete and Kamer for the timber. As Dan and Fred said, that this area that we're standing in right now was overly saturated, not an ideal build site. So we had a pretty stringent erosion and sediment control plan that we had put in place along with the construction sequence to dry up this whole area to make it buildable. So once that was done, there was fill that needed to be brought in. There was approximately 2,400 cubic yards of material that was brought in to build up the area after all the organics were scraped off to make it a buildable site. And in the design process, it was designed by Jason Skinner through Jess Engineering. We talked about the style of trusses to match his existing barn. It ties together a little bit better than if we were to change to a different overshot or monoslope roof. Like we had said before, we expanded the feeding area with the feed lane. It's a lot more easier to access than what he had before that was inside the barn. And one thing that Fred did also is that he, using his nutrient management credit money during construction, he poured a solid concrete slab in the barn to make that area easier to clean, so he could do one continuous scrape from there all the way around to the manure storage. One thing that Belden Trucking did is they decided to cut in the grooves in the barnyard after the concrete was poured. There's plenty of benefits to that. It reduces the degradation of the concrete from the spurs, the chipping that you get from typical scraping. That kind of encouraged some Watershed employees to now include that into our specs and make that a requirement for all of our barnyards kind of moving forward. It's better for animal health because you don't get those spurs and chips of concrete stuck in their feet.
That is excellent, because grooving the concrete, you can scrape. First of all, when you're scraping, it's quiet, and there's no banging. And this is the best I've seen what they did here on the ramp. Mm-hmm. But still, you get on there with a skid steer and try and turn, it jumps and everything. This, like it's not even there.
And this was done after it was poured.
That's done after it's poured. Yeah, the manure storage ramp is basically for traction.
Was rolled, yeah.
Was rolled.
Okay.
And I mean, Norwick did a great job rolling it in. They were pretty tedious with it. There was
Yeah.
a guy sitting on top of the roller as they were rolling it in to make sure that it was to get the
Yeah.
correct grooves.
Like I say, I wouldn't want that where cows are walking. That's what, I guess what I'd say. For what the purpose of that, for what it is, that's perfect because it's just traction. But out there, like I say, they will come running in, and you think even with the slick on the top, they don't slip or nothing.
Now, one of the questions I had on really hot days, do they like to be in here? Or
They
no?
still like to go in their old little building.
Oh.
For some reason, they all got to huddle in there, which I don't understand because there's open air here with nice dry bedding, and they got to huddle in the hole.
Along with the project, we expanded his laneway, so he has access to go around the building, around the manure storage, around the whole structure to get out into his other pastures, and he also has access to go through the building when he needs to. We installed a concrete trough hydrant that's out of the water course because we were fencing off all of his sources of water for his animals, so we supplied a winter waterer out there, which kept them out of the more wet areas. And for the fence, I know Fred has tried barbed wire
And high tensile.
and high tensile. All of those were not successful, but it seems that we went to woven wire as a physical barrier, and then we put a piece of barbed wire on top, and that seems to be working pretty well to keep them out of the area. There is no electric up here, so we had very limited options as far as what we were trying to use. We also, with the building, we included sides for wind protection and snow protection, because obviously out here at this elevation we get some drifts and
Yes, we do know that.
and yes,
This is probably the nice day we'll be here.
right.
One nice day a month.
Yeah.
Like you say,
I don't know how your parents picked this place.
how did they?
Yeah.
I have no idea either.
Another thing that we did with this barnyard project, we were talking about the lower crossing by the milk barn. We tore out the cattle slats and put a culvert crossing in, so the animals aren't walking through the cattle slats, which were
They were
out of
doing
lifespan.
that. They were doing that daily.
Yeah. So now
Plus, like even during nice winter days, I don't have to worry about ice and from where the water was going across the slats and stuff. That's the one thing. Like here, year round, if it's nice enough, I like them to go
Out.
walk and go as far as they can go.
And this way we have a dry crossing.
Right.
2 culverts. And you're not walking through the water.
Yes.
The only other thing I'll mention, kind of off the topic, is we did the cover crops too here. The first year you drilled them yourself, 2 years in a row, and was able to graze some of those cover crops. And then we did the helicopter last year. And now you're planning to drill them this year.
Yes, hopefully. Yes.
And I will say throughout this whole process, I'll say, Fred, you were very easy. Communication was open between Belgian Trucking and everybody involved, so it made the project go as smoothly as it could possibly go. Yes, we ran into some snafus, like a tree falling on the headers that they put up when they built that wall.
Yes, with the baby calf jammed in between the tree and the fence. It's nice.
One of the contractors leaving the gate open and having cows right outside your window at
Yes.
early in the morning. But other than
There's only
those,
2 days left, and they would have been done.
but other than those things, I think pretty well.
That's pretty good.
Communicated well, and we were all. It was good to work together to get this project done.
And then, as far as other future things on the farm, we have a calf facility that's planned down by the dairy barn in the future. The barnyard is out of lifespan and doesn't meet NRCS's standards and specifications as far as having, 300 foot of filter area below it. So the plan is to roof that barnyard.
Yep.
Cut. I think we got everything.
All participating farms in the Watershed Ag program who manage manure have a nutrient management plan. NMP today looks a lot different than it did in 1995. Science and research are constantly teaching us new things about nutrient runoff, environmental risk, crop production, so our plans are ever evolving and changing for the better. The Kuhn Farm has had a nutrient management plan since 1995 when they first started participating in the program. We have 3 different levels of plans. They receive a standard plan, which means their plan shows the number of loads of manure they can apply per field, any timing restrictions there might be, and it also shows setbacks. The Kuhn's current plan is good through the year 2022, and all of our nutrient management plans follow the NRCS 590 standard. So all farms are soil sampled every 3 years. The Watershed Ag program actually soil samples an average of 1,600 fields per year. The Kuhn's were last sampled in 2018, so they are due to be soil sampled again next summer. The manure storage that was completed last fall made it a lot easier for the Kuhn's to follow their nutrient management plan. It allows them the ability to store manure when fields are saturated, frozen, or just inaccessible due to crop growth. And it also allows for them to spread more loads on fields that they normally wouldn't be able to get any manure to. They are also in the nutrient management credit program and have been for the last 15 years. So this farm, every year they keep record of where they spread their manure, how many loads, when it was spread, and they submit those records. And after those records are reviewed, they're approved if they follow their nutrient management plan, and then they're awarded a credit. And this credit can be used against any eligible expenses, ranging from manure handling expenses to lime.
So PFM, as you know, helps out with the nutrients loading on your farm.
Right.
And what we're trying to do is work together.
Well, the PFM is gauging, trying to, so we know what nutrients are coming on and going off and how much we're using, and trying not to bring as much on, outside on from commercial sources, including grain or fertilizer.
Increase up the efficiency as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that we really got to think about, because as you and I know, minerals aren't changed in the cow. Our PFM program is really focusing on that phosphorus. So, and that's really found in a lot of mineral mixes. So I know a lot of our work is looking at those mineral mixes that we put into the feed to make sure that we do make sure that our cows are fed to their best potential, but not overfeeding them so that we're putting it back on the soil where we don't need to.
The grain is one of our biggest expenses, so we don't want to overfeed it, and it's hard to understand, but the phosphorus is in the grain. It's not just the minerals that you put in the grain, it's in the corn or the soy or whatever. It's, and if you feed too much of it, it just gets excreted and it runs away, or
Ends up in the water supply.
Yeah, right.
So it's, and on the other hand, it's better to recycle byproducts that are fed in the, put in the grain, and recycle them through a cow so that they can produce more milk that is consumable for humans.
Knowing our numbers of our forages and our grain, knowing the nutrients that are going into the cow, and then April, when April's our PFM planner, she looks more into the dairy comp and asks those outsider questions that we might not notice looking at our own dairy comp reports, like, why are these cows inverting at 60 days of milk? What is going on here? What is it? Is there something that I need to look at? Is there something that we're not seeing or we're doing wrong? It's also just, it's not just about the nutrients, it's about the health of the cows that they focus on too, which is really good because it saves us money in the long run too.
well, it's getting more information or unbiased information to use with our dairy records to try to save on any or all costs, whatever we can do.
So in turn, what I end up doing is I'm trying to incorporate a team of people that work together here. So when I get information, I'm sending that not just to you, but you're a herd nutritionist. And hopefully we'll get right on the same page, so what we can do is make sure that the timing of when samples are pulled, that herd nutritionist can make adjustments and become closer into what your cows need,
Yeah.
and according to your management.
It's just the main thing is just having more data to use. That's sort of the big thing.
Yes, it is.
And like I say, it used to be we've always had Dairy One or tested cows for the milk and stuff, but we never really used the numbers as much as we sort of do now. And also, the PFM program has helped us with the cost of testing too, somewhat. And actually, it's been a big help because the economy the last 5 years in the dairy industry has been sort of soft.
Well, it's rough. It's rough. And I just want, working with the Watershed Ag program, all we're trying to do is to help enhance your stewardship and make sure that you're around, because you guys are great stewards of the land. Talk about what farming has helped you do, your background, etc.
Okay, so I started in 2009. I was like a Boy Scout because that's what all the kids in school did, and I was trying to be a cool kid, you know, and that stuff just really didn't interest me. So Dad actually got in contact with Barb Henselman, and he took me to my first judging meet at what used to be the SkyMac farm in Bloomville, and that kind of just started the whole thing with me being more involved with the dairy and everything. So it's been 10 years since I started showing at the Delaware County Fair, and ever since then I've just become so much more involved in the farm. It started off me, and like when I was 13 I was a feed manager, which meant I fed all the cows grain and stuff and made sure things were swept in, and over time I've just taken on more tasks. Like I take care of everything with herd health. I milk when I'm home. When I'm not in school, I milk once a day, and I breed most of our cows when I'm home. So, and all of this is kind of just built up. Right now, I'm a junior at SUNY Morrisville. I'm studying dairy management production. At the end of this year, I'll have my 2-year degree in agricultural sciences with a concentration in technology. But having the on-farm background has really, it's actually pushed me forward in college. I understand the topics that they're discussing, but what I'm learning is what the science behind it, and that is really beneficial to me because now I can understand why are things happening in my herd, why are things happening here. So once I'm done with college, once I'm done with my bachelor's or undergrad in college, I want to go and get my master's degree in education so I can either be an extension agent, maybe a high school ag teacher if that's really what happens, but that's kind of the plan.
You like I said, you showed cows. You were in Holstein Club and 4-H, and you were very good at the trivia questions and
4-H Dairy Bowl.
4-H Dairy Bowl and Holstein Dairy Bowl. You went to nationals in both. You were like one of the top in the country.
Yeah.
For both.
Everything I've done, I've gone to so many different states and looked at dairies, is either prepping me to be a better person in industry or bettering this farm that I'm on here. So the farm life, if you want to call it that, has really given us one up. And it's crazy. You go to college and you work with different students, majors and such, and there's not one more major that has it more together than us dairy kids, because we've had to do everything that they've had to do since we were 14.
The watershed has been, sometimes we don't think about it, but like he was saying, other parts of the state and stuff, there's just not the funding to do these type projects or programs, and it's great to have this many knowledgeable people that work as a team or even like a family for the most part.
Yeah, you talk about the team, but it's even some of these farms out in like western New York, they have to meet the same regulations that we do, but say they have to put in manure storage and soil and water maybe gives them half. They still got to come up with that other half, and that's a huge expense for them that our farms don't have here in Delaware County, and it's probably one of our saving graces because we don't incur that expense, and it's not, we don't have like a manure expense to per se. We don't have a manure storage expense that comes out of our balance sheet or income statement throughout the year because we have this program, and it's really beneficial to our farmers in our county.
Would you say the Watershed Ag program gives you more of a, opens up more opportunities and choices to farm it here in this county?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it gives us so much. It gives us not just, it helps us with our decision making, but the financial freedom. It gives us more financial freedom to maybe spend like manure spreaders for our farm exec. That $30,000 we can put towards maybe improving cow comfort in our barn, and that'll make us more money instead of a manure spreader that isn't really making us money, but it's a necessity. So it's kind of one hand washes the other. We take care of the land and they help us do it. So it's very.
That's exactly where it's at. Thank you. You nailed it.
A cover crop is a crop that we're using to have sort of year-round cover on the field. In particular, we're standing in a cornfield that had winter rye growing on it, seeded last fall in October, and that produced some growth that then was there through the winter and then started back up this spring. But what are some of the benefits that we're learning about cover crops, Dan?
What we're really working hard to do is keep nutrients out of the water supply, keep them out of the rivers and streams. If we can plant a cover crop and have that cover crop take up those nutrients, they're going to stay here for the farmer to use for the next crop, but also that prevents them from entering the water supply.
Ernie, you've been growing cover crops for a long time. There's been a resurgence in interest, and there's been more science as to why we should be doing cover crops, but why are you doing cover crops here on your farm?
After we planted them and plowed that ground up the next spring, the tilth in that ground was just amazing. We were looking for more organic matter all the time. That was one way to get it. And plus there is a little bit of fertilizer value with it when you work it down as far as the nitrogen end. We've just been doing it ever since. It's been a win-win situation.
One of the things that I think is fascinating that we've learned in the science is how these root systems of the cover crops through the winter feed the bacteria that are in the soil. As the plant then breaks down, when we terminate that cover crop, that provides organic matter that then helps that soil maintain its what we call soil health, its tilth and its good infiltration properties, so that we get less runoff of rainfall when we get those hard storms like we've had here recently.
Having those living roots in the soil provide a place for those microbes to live through the winter. And when we look at a cover crop in a field like this, we see the green growing on the top, and we think about that's where the value is as far as soil erosion and maintaining that soil in place. But as big a part of that is those roots that are in the soil.
What are some of the other ways that you and other farmers are using cover crops beyond just soil health reasons?
If you cut it at the right stage, rye, triticale, whatever you're using, it makes some pretty good feed, especially for heifers. If you're running a little tight on feed, it is one way to get some extra forage for your farm. Either you till it up or you can go right over it with a no-till corn planter and just plant right into that stubble, and the seed bed is just unbelievable.
Generally, when we spread manure, we lose a fair amount of the nitrogen to volatilization into the atmosphere. But when we've got a growing crop here that we're planting it into, that ammonia nitrogen is being taken up by these plants, and those plants will then hold on to that nitrogen and it'll be available to the corn crop later on. And so you're really conserving nitrogen and getting more out of the manure by spreading it over a live cover crop rather than just spreading it onto bare soil.
Another benefit I've heard farmers talk about is trafficability on these fields in the early spring. You've got a growing crop which is taking some of that moisture up and transpiring it into the atmosphere, makes these fields so that we can get on them a little earlier with equipment and get going.
The compaction end of things is always a big concern these days because equipment's getting bigger, and to me it looks like the soil is taking it really well. I think it was probably spongy enough almost that it absorbed a lot of that compaction. And I mean, we've had some pretty good rain since then, and you never saw any rain laying in the tracks or anything. It always,
Cooling.
yeah, it soaked right in pretty good.
There's different mixes that are being played with, and some of those mixes include a legume in them, something like a clover or a trefoil mixed in with a cereal grain or even an annual grass. And the purpose of that is to fix some nitrogen from the atmosphere and add that to the soil, and that can be another source of nitrogen for the crop that you'll grow after the cover crop is terminated.
Taking advantage of the symbiotic relationship where those legumes can fix nitrogen from the atmosphere and actually make it available to our plants. Kind of a smart move in a tight economy today when fertilizer prices are higher.
We do, I think, 7 acres, and if you average 40 bushel to the acre, 30, 40 bushel, well, that's quite a bit of seed. We've always grown a little bit of our own seed, but we do grow some certified seed every 2 or 3 years. Using your own seed like that, I think the germ tends to drop off a little bit.
What are some of the challenges or barriers for a farmer to establish cover crops on the farm?
Sometimes if you're renting a seeder, timing is a big thing. You run into the weather issue. When am I going to get the seeder? You don't want to do it too late in the fall. But shoot for September. It gives it that much more of an advantage before it has to go through the winter, and it will start growing a little quicker in the spring.
Wow, that's a pain.